You're just a stupid old lady." The words hung in the air of my small living room, seeming to cling to the curtains and the scent of the lemon tea I had just poured. They were sharp, brittle things, and they settled into the silence my grandson had created. My grandson, Leo. He stood over me, his arms crossed. He is a tall boy, or a young man, I suppose. He has his grandfather's handsome face, but his eyes were cold. They were the eyes of a stranger, filled with a hard, impatient light I didn't recognize. He was looking at me as if I were a piece of furniture he had just bumped into. He wanted money. It always came down to money. "Leo, that's enough," his mother, my daughter, Julia, said from the edge of my floral sofa. Her voice was weak, like a dry leaf skittering across pavement. She was twisting the strap of her handbag, her gaze fixed on a point just past my shoulder. Her silence, her permission of his disrespect, was the second blade in the wound. I looked down at my hands, resting in my lap. They are old hands. The skin is thin, like parchment, and the veins trace paths like rivers on an old map. I have used these hands to bake his birthday cakes, to soothe his fevers, to applaud his every small achievement, back when he had achievements worth applauding. Now they were the hands of a stupid old lady. "I am sorry you feel that way, Leo," I said. My voice was calm. It surprised even me. It sounded steady, smooth, like a polished stone from the creek I used to play in as a child. "Sorry?" he scoffed, a short, barking laugh that held no humor. "I need that money, Grandma. It's not a request. My entire future depends on it." His future. He spoke of it as if it were a commodity to be purchased. He was in his third year at the prestigious Brampton University, a place he believed he had earned entrance to through his own sheer brilliance. He had a full scholarship, a point of immense pride for his mother, and, once upon a time, for me. "We discussed this, dear," I said softly, finally lifting my gaze to meet his. "Your scholarship covers your tuition and your board. I send you an allowance every month for your books and your incidentals." "Incidentals?" He threw his hands in the air. "You call $500 incidentals? Do you have any idea what a real life costs? The car I need to get to my internship? The clothes I need to network?" "The car?" I repeated, nodding slowly. "The red convertible I saw you posing with online? The one you told your mother was out rental for the weekend?" Leo's face flushed a dark mottled red. Julia winced, finally looking at me, her eyes pleading. "Don't, Mom. Just give it to him." "You've been spying on me?" Leo accused, pointing a finger. "It is difficult to spy, Leo, when you broadcast your life so loudly," I replied, my calmness seeming to infuriate him further. "I will not pay for that car. I will not pay for the debts you have accrued trying to live a life you have not yet earned." "And you're the judge of what I've earned?" he snarled, stepping closer. "You sitting here in this morgue with your dusty books and your dead husband's pictures? What do you know about earning anything? You're just a relic. You're just a stupid old lady." There it was again, the finality of it. He had judged me, found me wanting, and dismissed me. I felt the familiar, sharp sting of tears behind my eyes, but I willed them away. I would not give him the satisfaction. I turned my gaze to my daughter. "Julia?" I asked. Just that one word. Julia stood up, smoothing her skirt. She wouldn't look at me. "Mom, please. He's young. He made a mistake with the car. If we don't pay it, there will be trouble." "He will face the trouble he has made," I said simply. "Then you're useless," Leo shouted, completely and utterly useless. He stormed to the door, yanking it open so hard the small brass bell I kept on the handle chimed frantically. Don't bother calling me again, not until you're ready to actually help your family. Julia followed him, a shadow pulled in his wake. Leo, wait. She glanced back at me, her face a mask of apology and resentment. He didn't mean it, Mom. He's just stressed. Then she, too, was gone. The front door slammed. The vibration rattled my teacup in its saucer. The little bell went silent. Silence. The house was filled with it. It was heavier than before, thick with the residue of his contempt. I sat there for a long time. I looked at the empty sofa where my daughter had been. I looked at the 3 cups of tea on the coffee table, 2 of them untouched, already growing cold. A stupid old lady. A relic. Useless. I closed my eyes. I thought about Leo. I thought about his brilliant scholarship. I thought about the university he was so proud of, the university he treated like his own personal kingdom, the one he believed he was entitled to. A slow, cold understanding settled over me, not sadness anymore. Something else, something heavier. Resolve. He called me stupid. He called me useless. He, who was drinking from a well he didn't even know I had dug. What my grandson Leo didn't know, what my daughter Julia had long forgotten, was that the stupid old lady sitting in her quiet, modest house was one of the wealthiest women in the country. And, more importantly, I was the sole anonymous benefactor of the Brampton University Endowment Fund. Leo, in his rage, had called me useless. He didn't know that the very scholarship he held, the Arthur Harrison Memorial Scholarship, named for my late husband, was funded entirely by me. The university, his proud alma mater, the place he used as a shield and a status symbol, depended on my useless signature for its most prestigious programs, its new library, and the very financial aid that kept half its student body afloat. My Arthur, he had been the brilliant one, the visible one. He built an empire from nothing but a good idea and a relentless work ethic. I, Clara Harrison, had been his partner, not just in life, but in business. I was the one who read the fine print. I was the one who saw the patterns in the numbers. I was the one who knew people. Arthur was the sail, but I was the rudder, steering us quietly through storms he never even knew were brewing. When he passed, he left it all to me, not to Julia, not to anyone else, to me. The world thought he had left a comfortable but not obscene amount. They thought the bulk of his estate had been liquidated and donated, which it was. But I was the one who directed that donation, folding the true Harrison fortune into a series of anonymous trusts and foundations. I had seen what unearned wealth did to people. I had seen it begin to curdle the edges of my own daughter's ambition, making her soft and entitled, and I vowed it would not happen to my grandson. So I retired. I moved from our grand estate to this small, comfortable house in the suburbs. The house I had grown up in. I kept one good car, I wore simple clothes, and I tended my roses. To my family and to the world, I became Grandma Clara, a sweet, frugal widow living quietly on her late husband's modest pension. The Arthur Harrison Memorial Scholarship was my private covenant with my husband. It was designed to find students who had character, not just brains, Leo had plenty of those, but empathy, humility, and resilience. The irony, the bitter, bitter irony, was that Leo had applied for it himself. I remembered the day the university chancellor, a man I spoke with monthly under the pseudonym E.A. Crichton, had called me. "We have a remarkable candidate for the Harrison Scholarship this year, Miss Crichton," he had said, his voice booming with enthusiasm. The young man named Leo Harrison. Any relation, just by chance? Harrison is a common name, I had replied, my voice perfectly even. Of course, of course. Well, his grades are astounding, top of his class. His essays are, well, they're brilliant. A little arrogant, perhaps, but brimming with confidence. I had read Leo's application. I saw the arrogance, the way he took credit for group projects, the subtle dismissal of his high school teachers. But I also saw the spark of his grandfather. I thought, I hoped, that the scholarship, the honor of it, would humble him, that it would mold him. I let the committee grant it to him. I did not intervene. I simply allowed it. I thought, this will be his making. He will understand the legacy of the man it is named for. I was wrong. It had only fed the worst parts of him. It confirmed his belief that he was special, that he was inherently better than others, that the world owed him everything. And now he stood in my living room and called me stupid. He had no idea that E.S. Crichton, the mysterious benefactor the university courted, the one whose checks built the new science wing, the one the chancellor referred to in hushed, reverent tones, was the same woman he had just dismissed as a relic in a morgue. My usefulness was my secret. My silence was my power. I walked to my desk, the one Arthur had given me. It was a simple, dark wood, not at all like the imposing mahogany slab he had used. I picked up the phone, the old-fashioned landline, and dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang twice. Chancellor Davies' office. This is E.A. Crichton, I said calmly. Please put me through. I have some concerns about the current recipient of the Harrison Memorial Scholarship. Leo wanted to see what useless looked like. I decided it was time to show him. He had mistaken my patience for weakness. He had mistaken my quiet for ignorance. He had forgotten that the oldest trees have the deepest roots. And I owned the entire forest. My conversation with Chancellor Davies was brief and precise. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The Crichton name, even though it was a fiction, carried more weight than 100 shouting voices. Chancellor, I said, my voice as mild as the weak morning sun. I am calling for a review of the Harrison Scholarship's stewardship. I have concerns that its current recipient may not be honoring the spirit of the endowment. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Miss Crichton, this is highly unusual. Is there a specific charge? There is a specific mandate, I corrected him gently. The scholarship is for character and academic diligence. I am asking you to conduct a quiet but thorough audit, not of the university's funds, Chancellor, but of Mr. Harrison's conduct, his attendance, the veracity of his internship, the manner in which he represents the Harrison legacy. I trust you will be discreet. Of course, Miss Crichton. Absolutely. I will look into it personally. Thank you, Chancellor. I will await your report. I hung up the phone. And then the waiting began, and with it, the performance. I became, in the weeks that followed, the very stupid old lady Leo had accused me of being. I retreated into my home. When my daughter Julia called, which she did 2 days later, her voice tight with a manufactured brittle brightness, I played my part. Mom, just calling to check on you. How are you feeling? Oh, I am quite all right, dear, I answered, letting my voice waver just a little, a touch of frailty, just watering my African violets. They seem a bit sad this week. A heavy sigh from her. Mom, about the other day, Leo is just, you know how he is. He's under so much pressure. That university is very demanding. I am sure it is, I said softly. He is a very bright boy. He is. He really is. He gets passionate. He didn't mean it. You know he loves you. I felt a cold, hard pebble of grief settle in my stomach. It wasn't the hot sting of tears anymore. It was this cold, dense weight. He did not love me. He did not even see me. He saw an obstacle, a broken down ATM. Of course, dear. Don't you worry about me, I said. You just take care of him. We'll come by for dinner soon. I'll make your favorite, the angel food cake. That would be lovely, Julia. But she did not come. The weeks stretched on. Instead of a visit, packages arrived. A cashmere shawl I did not need, a box of expensive, overly sweet chocolates that I gave to my neighbor. These were offerings of guilt sent from a distance, easier than looking me in the eye. I spent my time observing. Leo had not blocked me from his social media accounts. Why would he? In his mind, I was just a stupid old lady. He probably thought I didn't even know how to look. And what I saw turned the cold pebble of grief into a block of ice. There was the red convertible, no longer a rental, but now his permanent possession, parked illegally in a handicap spot in front of the university library. There were pictures of him at parties, holding bottles of champagne that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. He used words like networking and building my brand. He posted a picture of his internship supervisor, a good, decent man I knew personally, with a caption that mocked the man's outdated suit. He was arrogant, he was cruel, and he was careless. This was the part that truly hurt. This was the initial suffering the stories always talk about. It was not the suffering of poverty or helplessness. I had none of that. It was the suffering of a creator watching their creation twist into something monstrous. I had given him this opportunity. I had allowed him this scholarship, hoping it would build him. Instead, it was arming him. I looked at a photograph on my mantle. It was Leo, age 8. He was missing his 2 front teeth and holding up a small, muddy trout he had caught at the lake with Arthur. His smile was wide and pure, his eyes alight with uncomplicated joy. Where had that boy gone? I touched the glass, my finger tracing the outline of his small face. Oh, Arthur, I whispered to the empty room. What have we done? I was playing the victim, yes. I was the poor, forgotten grandmother. I let my daughter think I was frail. I let my grandson think I was irrelevant. I let them both believe they had won, that their dismissal of me was complete and without consequence. My suffering was real, but it was not the suffering of weakness. It was the quiet, agonizing suffering of patience, the patience of a spider sitting in the corner of its web, feeling the distant, frantic vibrations of a fly that has just entangled itself. A week later, Chancellor Davies called back. His voice was no longer booming. It was clipped, cold. Miss Crichton, I have the report you requested. And? I asked, already knowing. It is distressing. Mr. Harrison's grades have dropped a full letter grade this semester. He has missed 8 of his last 12 tutorial sessions. His internship, Miss Crichton, he was fired from it 3 days ago. Apparently, he told his supervisor that he was too busy with high-level networking to file paperwork. I closed my eyes. I see. And there is the matter of his finances. We did a discreet inquiry. He is deeply in debt to several local merchants for that vehicle. And worse, he listed the university itself as his guarantor on a private loan. citing his full-ride Harrison scholarship as proof of guaranteed income. This is a severe breach of the scholarship's terms. He has, in effect, weaponized your generosity. I was silent. The block of ice in my stomach was now a glacier. Ms. Crichton? What? What would you like me to do? The Chancellor's voice was hesitant. He knew the power I held. He knew one word from me could build a new hospital wing, or, apparently, and a young man's career. For now, Chancellor, I said, my voice dangerously calm, do nothing. Do not inform him of the breach. Do not tell him he was fired. Let the letters, let the consequences find him on their own. But, Miss Crichton, the creditors. They will find him, I said. The scholarship funds for the next semester, however, they will not. Suspend the next payment. Cite administrative review. Understood, Miss Crichton. And, Chancellor, when he calls your office, and he will call, panicked, you are to tell him that the matter is out of your hands. It is being reviewed by the endowment board directly. Of course. I hung up the phone. I looked again at the smiling, gap-toothed boy on my mantel. The victim phase was over. The observation was complete. Leo believed he was untouchable. He had forgotten that what is given can always, always be taken away. Karma, you see, is not a lightning bolt from a vengeful god. It is not a sudden, dramatic strike. It is a slow, patient, and meticulous bookkeeper. It is the steady accumulation of your own choices, the unpaid invoices of your own arrogance, all coming due at once. I did not have to do anything to begin Leo's downfall. I simply had to stop protecting him from himself. I had been, through the scholarship, funding his self-destruction. My only action was to turn off the tap. The rest was simple gravity. The first call came exactly 1 week after my conversation with the Chancellor. I was in my garden, pruning my roses, my hands covered in dirt. I let the phone ring 4 times before picking it up, wiping my hands on my apron. Hello? Mom? It was Julia. Her voice was thin, high-pitched, like a wire stretched too tight. The brittle cheerfulness was gone. This was the voice of raw, undiluted panic. Julia, dear, what a nice surprise. Is everything all right? No, Mom. Nothing is all right. It's Leo. He's in terrible trouble. I played my part. I let my voice fill with the quavering concern of a grandmother. Oh, my heavens! Is he hurt? Was there an accident? No, not like that. It's, Mom, it's money. It's that car, the red one. He missed 2 payments. He told me the scholarship stipend was covering it, that it was a perk. But the company called him, and then they called me. They're looking for him. They're going to repossess it. They're talking about fraud. Fraud? I repeated the word, letting it hang in the air between us. But, Julia, how can that be? A car is a big expense. Why would he? I don't know, she almost shrieked. He's not answering his phone. I told you we should have just given him the money. You should have given him the money. The blame. It was so familiar. It was always easier to blame the stupid old lady than the brilliant golden boy. Julia, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I do not have that kind of money. You know what I live on. My pension is. It's just enough for this house and my tea. I cannot pay for a convertible. It was a lie, of course. I could have bought the entire car company, but Clara, the widow, could not, and it was Clara she was talking to. There was a long, choked sound on the other end. So that's it? You're going to do nothing? I am going to pray for him, dear, I said softly, as I always do. She hung up on me. I went back to my roses. The thorns pricked my fingers, but I barely felt it. The first domino had fallen. I checked Leo's social media. The daily, arrogant posts had stopped. There were no more pictures of parties, no more mocking captions. There was just silence. The second call came 3 days later. It was a Saturday night. I was reading. He's been fired. Julia didn't even say hello. Her voice was flat, hollowed out. He lost the internship. He was fired. Weeks ago, Mom. He didn't tell us. He's been pretending to go, lying. To us, to everyone. Oh, Julia, I sighed. That poor, foolish boy. He must be so ashamed. Ashamed? Her voice cracked. He's furious. He's unraveling. He says the supervisor was jealous of him, that he's a victim of petty office politics. He still doesn't get it. He went to the bank to get a loan to cover the car, and they laughed at him. Of course they did, I murmured. He has no job, no income. He told them about the scholarship, she cried, her voice rising again. He told them he had a full ride, guaranteed income. And that's when he found out. Ah, here it was, the final invoice. Found out what, dear? They suspended it, Mom. The university. They froze his funds. They sent him an email. Administrative review pending. He's ruined. The car is gone. They towed it this morning. His friends won't answer his calls. He's overdrawn his bank account. He tried to go to the chancellor, and the man's secretary turned him away, said the chancellor was in meetings and that the matter was being handled by the endowment board directly. He's been kicked out of his dorm, Mom. They can't let him stay if his account is in arrears. She was sobbing now, a raw, painful sound that tore at me. This was my daughter, and her heart was breaking for her son, a son who had caused every second of this. He's ruined, she whispered again. It's all gone in 2 weeks. It's all gone. He's at the bus station. He has nowhere to go. I was silent. I let her cry. I let the full weight of his consequences settle over her, over the phone line. This was the necessary barren ground upon which anything new might possibly grow. His arrogance had built a tower, and it had crumbled to dust, just as it always does. He's scared, Mom, Julia finally whispered. I've never heard him sound like this. He sounds small. Small, I repeated. Yes, that is what's left when the boasting is stripped away. What? What are we going to do? She asked. She wasn't blaming me now. She wasn't demanding. She was just asking. I looked around my quiet, comfortable living room. The morgue, he had called it. He has a home, Julia, I said, my voice even. It is not a university dorm. There are no parties. There is no prestige. But there is a roof, and there is a bed. His old room is just as he left it. There was a long pause. Here, she whispered. You would take him in? After what he said to you? He is my grandson, I said simply, and he has nowhere else to go. Tell him to take the 10:40 bus. I will be at the station to pick him up. I hung up the phone. I went to the small bedroom at the end of the hall, the one with the faded baseball-themed wallpaper and the single twin bed. I pulled back the comforter. I opened the window to let the cool night air in to clear out the stagnant smell of dust and disuse. The downfall was complete. His artificial world was gone. Now he was entering mine. And in my house, the stupid old lady makes the rules. The real lesson was about to begin. The 10:40 bus was, as always, late. The station at that hour was a liminal space, smelling of diesel fumes, stale coffee, and the weary desperation of people moving between lives. I sat on a hard plastic bench, my hands folded in my lap, a small, quiet woman in a wool coat. I was invisible to the people rushing past, and that was just how I liked it. When the bus finally wheezed to a stop, its brakes hissing in the damp night air, he was one of the last ones off. I almost didn't recognize him. The change was staggering. Gone was the arrogant young prince in the designer-labeled clothing. Gone was the confident stride, the chin held high. The boy who shuffled down the bus steps was diminished. He wore a simple hooded sweatshirt and jeans, the same ones I'd seen him in 3 days ago in his last angry photograph. His shoulders were slumped, his face pale and shadowed with a scruffy, unkempt beard. He carried a single backpack, which looked half empty. He stood on the curb, looking lost, his eyes scanning the sparse crowd without purpose. He looked, for the first time in his life, small. "Leo," I called out. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the noise. His head snapped up. He saw me. I watched a complex, ugly storm pass over his features. First, a flash of his old anger, his resentment that I was his only port. Then, a wave of deep, profound humiliation that turned his pale cheeks a dull, blotching red. Finally, just emptiness. He was a vessel that had been scoured out. He didn't speak. He just picked up his bag and began walking toward my car. I followed him, the quiet click-clack of my sensible shoes on the pavement. I opened the trunk of my old, reliable sedan. He threw his bag in, a gesture that still held a trace of his old petulance, and then he slumped into the passenger seat, slamming the door. The ride home was encased in a thick, heavy silence. He stared out the window, his reflection a ghostly smear against the passing streetlights. The car, my car, smelled of old books and the faintest hint of the roses I'd been cutting. It was a stark contrast to the new leather and cologne scent of his lost convertible. He was breathing the air of his failure. He, of course, was the first to break. His pride, even in tatters, could not bear the quiet. "So, are you happy?" he muttered, his voice raspy. "You got what you wanted. I'm ruined. You happy you get to say, 'I told you so'?" I kept my eyes on the road. "I am not happy, Leo," I said, my voice perfectly level. "I am heartbroken. 'I told you so' is a petty prize. I have no interest in it." "Then why? Why are you doing this? Letting all this happen?" "This," I said, signaling for my turn, "is not something I did, Leo. This is something you earned. You were fired. You accrued debt. You broke the terms of your scholarship. These are the receipts for your choices. I simply stopped paying the bill." He flinched as if I had slapped him. "The scholarship, that endowment board, they're trying to destroy me." "Are they?" I asked mildly. "Or are they simply stewards of a fund meant to honor a man's legacy? A legacy of character and humility?" He scoffed, a bitter, dry sound. "Character, right, as if you know anything about that." We were pulling into my driveway. I turned off the engine. The silence of the suburbs rushed in, broken only by the sound of crickets. I turned to look at him. His face was in shadow, but I could see the defiant set of his jaw. You are right, I said, surprising him. I don't know what to think about your character, Leo, but we are about to find out. I got out of the car. He followed me, dragging his bag. I unlocked the front door and switched on the hall light. The house was clean, warm. It was, as he'd called it, a morgue, but it was a peaceful one. Your room is as you left it, I said, walking to the linen closet. The sheets are fresh. You can shower and go to bed. We will talk in the morning. He stood in the middle of my living room, looking at the floral sofa, the dusty books, the pictures of my late husband. He looked like a wild animal caught in a cage, one that was bafflingly comfortable. What am I supposed to do here? He whispered. For tonight, you will sleep, I said, and tomorrow you will begin to work. He awoke late, well past 10. I was in the kitchen washing vegetables from my garden. I had already been up for 4 hours. He shuffled in, his hair matted, his eyes puffy. He looked like a sulking teenager again. There's coffee in the pot, I said, not turning around, and toast if you'd like to make some. He poured a mug, his hands shaking slightly. He leaned against the counter, a ghost in my sunny kitchen. All right, he said, trying to muster some of his old authority. What's this work you're talking about? You want me to, what, take out your trash? I turned, wiping my hands on my apron. Good morning, Leo. I'm glad you slept. Yes, you will take out the trash and the recycling. After that, you will weed the back garden, all of it. Then you will help me scrub and wax this kitchen floor. And then you will cook dinner with me. I am making pot roast, and you will learn to peel potatoes. Poorly. He stared at me. You're joking. I am not joking. You are living under my roof. You are eating my food. You have no money and no income. You are, for all intents and purposes, my employee. The stupid old lady is now your boss. Your payment is room and board. These are the terms. This is servitude. I'm a scholar. You were a scholar, I corrected him, my voice steel wrapped in silk. Right now, you are an unemployed young man who is deeply in debt and has nowhere else to go. You may accept my terms, or you may find another place to live. The choice is yours. His face went dark. I saw the rage warring with the cold, hard fact of his absolute powerlessness. He had no one to call, no friends. His mother, Julia, had no money to give him. He was truly, completely at rock bottom. He said nothing. He just slammed his coffee mug down, spilling some on the counter, and stormed out the back door toward the garden. I heard the garage door rattle as he yanked out the shears and the weeding forks. I went back to washing my vegetables. The first day of his new life had begun. The work was hard. He was not used to it. His back ached. His soft, networking hands were blistered and dirty by noon. He was clumsy, angry, and miserable. He pulled up 3 of my prize-winning petunias along with the crabgrass. I did not yell. I simply went out, knelt beside him in the dirt, and said, "This is a weed. This is a flower. Pay attention, Leo. It is important to know the difference." He worked all day, fueled by a sullen, silent rage. When he came inside, covered in sweat and dirt, I handed him a sponge and pointed to the bucket of soapy water. He was scrubbing my floor, on his hands and knees, when the real lesson began. The physical labor had exhausted his anger, and all that was left was the vast, empty space of his humility. I saw his shoulders begin to shake, just slightly. He was not just scrubbing away the grime on my linoleum. He was scrubbing away the arrogance, the entitlement, the hard polished lacquer he had spent 3 years applying to himself. He was, at last, hitting the wood beneath. It did not happen in a day or a week. True change is not a lightning strike. It is the slow, agonizing turn of a great ship in a heavy sea. The first week, Leo was a storm of sullen silence. He did the work, but with a barely concealed rage. He would chop the firewood for my hearth with a violence that made me fear for his fingers. He scrubbed, he weeded, he painted, his jaw set, his eyes dark. He ate the simple, hearty meals I cooked, but he would not look at me. He was a prisoner, and I was his jailer. I did not push. I did not preach. I simply existed. I woke before him. I drank my tea. I read my books. I did my own work alongside him. I let my quiet, steady routine be the walls of his new world. The first crack appeared 2 weeks in. He was on a stepladder, cleaning the gutters. It was a filthy, thankless job. I was below, holding the ladder steady. "You know," he said, his voice quiet, muffled as he scooped out a handful of wet, decaying leaves. "These gutters, the front bracket is completely rusted through. The next big storm, this whole section is going to come down." I looked up at him. His face was streaked with dirt. "Oh dear," I said. "I suppose I'll have to call a repairman." He was quiet for a long moment. "No," he said finally, "I can fix it. I saw some scrap metal in a rivet gun in the garage. I learned some basic fabrication at the university's engineering club. The one before." "The stupid club for geeks?" I asked, using the words he himself had used in a phone call to his mother I'd overheard months ago. He flinched. He stopped his work and looked down at me. His eyes, for the first time, were not filled with anger. They were just tired and clear. "Yeah," he whispered, "that one." He spent the next 2 days not just cleaning the gutters, but repairing them. He was meticulous. He was focused. He was proud of the work. When he was finished, the repaired section was stronger than the original. He didn't say, "Look what I did." He just said, "They won't leak anymore." That night, at dinner, he spoke. "I pulled up your petunias," he said, staring at his plate of pot roast. "Yes, you did." "I'm sorry. I was angry. I was just yanking at things. I didn't pay attention." "I know," I said. "Attention is a skill, Leo. It must be practiced." He nodded. I found the seed packets in the garage. I replanted them in the pots by the back door, just so you know." I looked out the window. There, on the patio, were my 3 little clay pots, filled with fresh soil. It was the first act of restoration I had seen from him. He had not just destroyed, he had mended. The weeks turned into 2 months. The sullen storm subsided, replaced by a deep, pensive quiet. He read my books. He asked me questions about his grandfather, Arthur. Not about his money or his success, but about him. What was he like? Was he scared when he started his first company? Did he ever fail? We talked. For the first time, we truly talked. I told him about Arthur's failures, his bankruptcies, the nights he came home pale with fear, and the resilience that got him up the next morning. Leo, in turn, began to confess. He spoke of the crushing pressure he'd felt, the desperate need to be somebody, the hollowness of the friends who had vanished, the sickening, addictive thrill of the money. He spoke of his own arrogance as if it were a fever he had finally broken. He was humbled. He was remorseful. He was, at last, the boy I remembered, trapped inside the wreckage of the man he had become. One cool afternoon in late autumn, he was sitting at the kitchen table helping me draft a grocery list. "Grandma," he said, his voice soft, I've been a monster." "Yes," I said, not unkindly. "You have been." I, I want to. I have to fix it. I don't know how. I can't go back to Brampton. I know that. I've disgraced the scholarship. I've disgraced Granddad's name. But I want to work. I want to pay back those merchants I stiffed. I want to. Maybe I can take classes at the community college. For real this time. Pay my own way. I'll get a job. At a garage, maybe. Fixing things. He looked up at me, his eyes brimming with a shame that was so pure, so honest, it ached. I have to apologize. I need to. I need to find a way to apologize to that endowment board, to the chancellor. Even if they'll never let me back, I have to tell them. I have to tell them they were right and that I'm sorry. I put down my pen. I looked at my grandson. The glacier in my stomach had, at last, begun to melt. "It is a strange coincidence you should say that, Leo," I said, my voice steady. "I have a meeting in the city tomorrow with my financial advisor about my pension. It's time for my annual review." "Oh," he said, nodding. "Okay. Do you need a ride?" "I was hoping you would offer. These old eyes don't care for the city traffic. And I would like you to sit in with me. You are so clever with numbers. You could look over the paperwork for me. Make sure this old lady isn't being taken for a ride." I used his own words. Old lady. I saw him wince, a small pain spasm. I'd be honored to, Grandma," he said, his voice thick. The next day, he drove us into the city. He wore a simple button-down shirt, the first time I'd seen him in anything but a sweatshirt in months. He was nervous, but quiet. He was not, however, prepared for where I directed him. "Here?" he asked, his voice full of disbelief as we pulled up to the tallest, most opulent glass skyscraper in the financial district. This is Sterling and Croft. This is the biggest corporate law firm in the state. This is where you have your pension." "They are very thorough, dear," I said mildly. "Park in the garage." He followed me into the lobby, a vast expanse of marble and silent, important people. He looked like a child in a palace. We were escorted to a private elevator, which opened directly onto the top floor. A severe-looking woman led us into a vast corner boardroom. The entire wall was glass, overlooking the city he had once thought he owned. And sitting at the head of the impossibly long, polished table was Chancellor Davies. Leo stopped dead. His face went bone white. He looked at the Chancellor, then at me, then back to the Chancellor. I could see the terror in his eyes. He thought I had brought him to his execution. "Chancellor Davies," he stammered, his hands twisting at his sides. "Sir, I... "Mr. Harrison," the Chancellor said, his voice cold and neutral. He did not stand. A man in a flawless gray suit at the end of the table, Mr. Sterling, stood. "Please, sit. We have been waiting for you." Leo sat, stiff as a board, in the chair next to me. He looked utterly bewildered. Mr. Sterling opened a thick, leather-bound folder. "We are here for the annual review of the Crichton Endowment. Chancellor, your report?" Chancellor Davies cleared his throat, directing his words to me. "Miss Crichton, as requested, the university has." Leo's head snapped toward me, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Miss Crichton?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. I don't understand. Who?" Mr. Sterling looked up, his glasses perched on his nose. "I'm sorry, young man. Did you not?" He looked at me, confused. I gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of my head. He does not know. I turned in my chair. I looked fully at my grandson. The frail old woman was gone. My voice, when I spoke, was the voice I used in boardrooms. It was the voice of E.A. Crichton. It was clear, precise, and held absolute authority. "Leo," I said. He stared at me, his eyes wide with a dawning, sickening horror. "You were right. I am an old lady, but I am not stupid, and I am far from useless." I paused, letting the silence stretch, letting him connect the dots in his brilliant mind. "My name," I said, "is Evelyn Arthur Crichton Harrison. My friends and my bankers call me Miss Crichton. I am the Crichton Endowment. I am the Harrison Memorial Scholarship. The university you attended, the internship you lost, the chancellor sitting before you, they answer to me." I watched his face. It was a terrible, agonizing thing to see. The blood drained from it, leaving him chalk white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The insults, the arrogance, the dismissals. Useless, stupid, relic, morgue. I saw every single one of them flash behind his eyes as he realized, fully and completely, who he had been speaking to. Leo did not speak. He did not move. He was a statue of dawning, agonizing comprehension. The blood had drained from his face, leaving him a waxy, chalky white. He looked at me, but I don't think he was seeing Grandma anymore. He was seeing a stranger, an architect, a woman he had never known. He was recalculating every conversation, every kindness, every refusal through this new, terrifying lens. I could hear the faint, expensive tick of the brass clock on the far wall. I could hear the whisper of the air conditioning. The silence in that room was louder than any of his previous shouts. When he finally made a sound, it was not a word. It was a small, choked gasp, as if all the air had been punched from his lungs. You! "Yes, Leo," I said, my voice calm. This was not a moment for me to be his grandmother. This was a moment for me to be Evelyn Crichton. Me. Chancellor Davies was watching Leo with a pained, clinical intensity. Mr. Sterling, my attorney, merely adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, looking to me for his next cue. Leo's gaze finally, agonizingly, tore away from mine. He looked down at the gleaming, polished mahogany of the boardroom cable. He saw his own reflection, a distorted, broken stranger staring back at him. I saw his hands, the hands that had, for 2 months, grown calloused and strong from pulling weeds and mending my gutters. I saw them tremble, violently. And then a single hot tear splashed onto the polished wood. And another. He made no sound. He just broke. It was not the performative tantrum of a boy who had lost his car. This was the silent, complete, and devastating disintegration of a man who had just been forced to see himself, truly, for the first in his life. He saw the monster he had been, and he saw the profound, patient power of the woman he had tried to wound. He put his head in his hands, his fingers digging into his hair. His shoulders shook. "Oh God," he whispered into his palms. "What I said to you at the house, Grandma." Mr. Sterling cleared his throat, a small, professional sound. "Miss Crichton, perhaps this is a private family." "This is a private family matter, Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet. "But it is also a matter for the Crichton Endowment. Chancellor Davies, you are here for a reason. Please proceed. The Chancellor sat up straighter, his voice regaining its institutional authority. He was no longer speaking to a benefactor's grandson. He was speaking to a failed scholar. Mr. Harrison, he said, and Leo flinched at the formal address. Your actions were a profound disappointment. Your academic probation, your dismissal from the internship for cause, and your flagrant, bordering on fraudulent misuse of the Harrison family name, it was a deep dishonor to the very legacy the scholarship was built to celebrate. Slowly, painfully, Leo lifted his head. His face was a ruin of shame, streaked with tears, his eyes red and raw. He did not look at me. He looked directly at Chancellor Davies. His voice was hoarse, but it was, for the first time in his life, completely devoid of ego. Sir, I have no excuses. I have nothing. You were right to take it all away. What I did, it was dishonorable. That is the only word for it. I took your kindness, and I took my grandmother's. He choked on the word, then forced it out. And I spat on it. I was arrogant and cruel and weak. He took a shuddering breath, locking eyes with the Chancellor. I told my grandmother this morning. I wanted to apologize. To the board, to you. I didn't know this. He gestured helplessly at me, at the room. I just knew I had to tell you that you were right and I was wrong, and that I am deeply, truly sorry for failing the scholarship, for failing your trust, and for failing my grandfather's name. He finished. There was nothing left for him to say. He had emptied himself. I watched him, and I knew. His apology was pure. He had been ready to make it before he knew I held the strings. He had been humbled by the work, by the dirt, by the silence. The reveal, here, in this office, was not the cause of his remorse. It was simply the witness to it. That was everything. I turned to Chancellor Davies. Chancellor, you have your report on Mr. Harrison's former academic status, but I believe you also have the second report I requested. The Chancellor, for the first time, looked at a different, thinner folder. Ah, yes, the report from your local grounds manager, Miss Crichton, from the past 2 months. He opened it. It is quite different. Meticulous, hard-working, quiet. Repaired the western gutter bracket without being asked. Showed mechanical aptitude. Respectful. Leo looked at me, his brow furrowed in confusion. Grounds manager? You mean Mr. Henderson? From next door? The man I helped with his hedge trimmer? Mr. Henderson is retired from landscaping, dear, I said mildly, but he was more than happy to keep an old friend apprised of the work being done on her property. I needed to know the man you were when you thought no one important was watching. That, Leo, is what your grandfather called character. I folded my hands on the polished table. The moment had come. Leo, I said, my voice softer now, but no less firm. You are correct. You have disgraced the Harrison Memorial Scholarship. It is gone. You will not be returning to Brampton University as a scholar. He nodded, a single sharp dip of his chin. He had expected it. The pain was clear on his face, but he accepted it. I understand. However, I continued, there is the matter of your debts, the local merchants you defrauded, the personal loan you took out against the scholarship's good name. They have been paid. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock. What? No, Grandma, no, you can't. I can't let you. You will not misunderstand me, I said, my Crichton voice returning. This is not a gift. It is not forgiveness. It is a transfer of your debt. You no longer owe those strangers. You now owe me every single cent. I leaned forward. You told me you wanted to work. You told me you wanted to go to the community college and pay your own way. You told me you wanted to get a job in a garage. Good. That is the plan. You may continue to live in my house, but your room and board will no longer be paid by simple chores. You will get a job, a real job. I expect you to be employed within 2 weeks. You will show me your pay stub every Friday. 50% of your earnings will go to me directly to pay down your debt. The other 50% you will put in a new bank account, an account you will use to pay for your own tuition at the community college. You will not see $1 single from the Harrison Trust until you have graduated with honors from an education you paid for with your own calloused hands. I sat back. Is that clear? He was staring at me, his mouth slightly open. The shock was gone. The horror was gone. His eyes, though still red, were shining with a dazzling, watery, and almost painful gratitude. He wasn't being given a handout. He was being given a path, a hard one, an honorable one, a way back. He stood up slowly. He looked at Chancellor Davies. He looked at Mr. Sterling. And then he looked at me. "Yes, Grandma," he said, his voice thick. He cleared his throat, standing straighter. "Yes, Miss Crichton. Yes, ma'am. It is. It is more than clear, and it is more than I deserve." "Thank you," he whispered. I promise, I will not fail you again. I will not fail me again." I stood up. The meeting was over. "Good. Chancellor, thank you for your time. Mr. Sterling." The ride home was just as silent as the ride there had been, but it was a different silence. It was not the thick, suffocating blanket of his rage and humiliation. It was the light, clean, and empty quiet of a slate that has just been wiped clean. As we pulled into my small driveway, he turned off the engine but didn't move. He sat there, his hands gripping the wheel. "Grandma," he said, his voice rough. "Evelyn, Miss Crichton, I don't know what to call you." I allowed myself a small, genuine smile. I reached over and patted his hand, the one that was now rough and stained with a bit of grease from my car's engine. "You can call me Grandma, Leo," I said, "but I do believe from this day forward you will finally remember my name." Leo got a job. It was not a glamorous job. He did not, as he had once boasted, network his way into it. He walked into Sal's Auto and Tire, a grimy 3-bay garage on the edge of town, and asked the owner for work. He started by sweeping floors and cleaning the grease traps. The first Friday, he came home late. I was in the living room, reading. He didn't come in and slump onto the sofa. He stood in the doorway, his 6-foot frame silhouetted against the hall light. He was covered in black, filthy grease. His fingernails were caked with it. He looked more exhausted than I had ever seen him, more than any day he had spent weeding my garden. He held out a paycheck. It was a thin, flimsy piece of paper. The amount was pitifully small. It's not much," he said, his voice quiet. I worked 46 hours. Sal, he says I'm a fast learner," he said. "Next week, he'll let me start doing oil changes." He hadn't been this proud when he'd won the Harrison Scholarship. "You are a fast learner, Leo," I said. "You always were." He walked to the kitchen table where I had placed 2 envelopes. One was marked EHC debt, the other was LH future. He took his small paycheck, he took a pen, and he did the math. He carefully divided his earnings, sliding the cash into each envelope. It was a ritual we would repeat every single Friday for the next 3 years. He enrolled in the local community college. His classes were at night. I would often wake late to the sound of the kettle boiling and find him at my kitchen table at 1 in the morning, his work-stained hands turning the pages of an advanced calculus textbook. His face would be smudged with grease he'd missed in the shower, his eyes red with fatigue, but he was present. He was there. His mother, Julia, came for dinner. She was apprehensive. She was expecting, I think, to find a broken boy or a simmering volcano. Instead, she found a man. Leo was explaining to her with genuine enthusiasm the complex engineering of a differential gear system. Julia watched her son, this new version of him, and she began to cry. Quietly, not her old panicked sobs. These were tears of relief. She turned to me while Leo was getting us dessert. "Mom," she whispered, taking my old hand in her soft one, I am so sorry for letting him, for not seeing, for blaming you." "We all see what we are ready to see, Julia," I said, patting her hand. "He is a good man. He got lost. He's found his way back." 3 years passed. 3 years of grinding work, late-night classes, and Friday envelopes. Leo became Sal's shop foreman. He knew every car, every customer. The locals, who had once heard whispers of the arrogant Harrison kid, now just called him Leo, the man who could make any engine purr. He graduated from the community college with honors. He didn't ask for a party. That Friday, he came home and placed his final envelope in the debt pile. It was done. He had paid back every single cent. The car, the loans, the merchants. We sat at the kitchen table. The debt envelope was empty. The future envelope was full. "So," I said, pouring him a cup of tea, "what now?" Brampton University would, I imagine, be very interested in a transfer student with your grades and your unique life experience. Leo smiled. It was a real smile. It reached his eyes. "No," he said, shaking his head. "No, that's a different life. That's a world for people who want to be something. I'm more interested in doing something." He reached for his backpack, a worn, oil-stained canvas thing that had replaced his designer bag, and pulled out a thick, spiral-bound notebook. He slid it across the table to me. It was not an application. It was a business plan. "Sal's, he's retiring," Leo said, his voice thick with a nervous excitement I hadn't heard before. "He wants to sell the shop. To me." I opened the book. It was meticulous. There were cost-benefit analyses, cash flow projections, marketing plans. It was brilliant. It was the fusion of his grandfather's ambitious mind and, well, my cautious one. But it was the last page that made my breath catch. It was titled, "The Harrison Apprenticeship Program." It's the real reason I want it," Leo said, rushing his words. "I see these kids, Grandma, they're like I was, arrogant, lost, no good. They hang around the shop. They want to be part of something. I want to give them a skill. I want to teach them what Sal taught me, the value of work, of fixing something that's broken. I want to pay them a fair wage, but I want to make them put half of it away for college, for their future, just like you did for me." He finally looked at me, his eyes clear and steady. I don't want a handout, Grandma. I'm not that person anymore. I have my savings. He tapped the future envelope. It's my down payment, but I need a loan, a business loan, for the rest. I drew up a payment plan with interest. I was wondering if Miss Crichton would be willing to be my partner. I looked at my grandson. The boy who had called me a stupid old lady was gone. The arrogant scholar was gone. In his place was a man with calloused hands, a humble heart, and a brilliant plan. A plan not to get rich, but to build something, to mend what was broken. I closed the notebook. I pushed it back across the table to him. "Your numbers are too conservative, Leo," I said, my voice crisp. "You haven't accounted for adding a fourth bay or the contracts you'll get from the city. We'll need to rework the 5-year projection." He stared at me, his eyes widening. I allowed myself a full, warm smile, the smile of a grandmother. "But your apprenticeship program, I think your grandfather would have called that the best investment of all." "Yes, Leo, the Crichton Endowment would be honored to partner with you." And that, my dear, is the story of the grandson who learned that true wealth isn't what you're given, but what you build with your own 2 hands. Did I do the right thing? Let me know what you would have done in the comments below. I have so many more stories to share. Please subscribe and join our family so you don't miss the next one. Until next time, this is Auntie Clara. Be good to one another.